What's going on, gamers? We got some March sales coming in from Matt Piscatella finally, so we can see the results of that, right? We remember the price hike announcement that Sony made at the end of the March too, which kind of gave them a bit of a boost. But it didn't matter because the Switch 2 and Pokemon Pocophia were kind of too strong. And I've been telling people that too. I said, they're going to win March. And I think after that too, definitely with the price hike, they're just going to win every month after that. They were going to take off eventually anyways. Definitely when they announced their next direct, show off a whole bunch of games and show what's going to be happening for the year. They have a lot of huge announcements coming. So definitely get ready for that. PlayStation's still doing well. But that price hike, yeah, no, but that didn't go in effect in March. You know what I mean? Actually, had a boost at the end. PSSR 2 is doing well as well. So they're both doing pretty good. But the Switch 2 had a little bit of a slowdown, but it's still tracking ahead of the Switch 1. And we're going to see that not only did Nintendo win for number one for year to date in the US, for the month, but for year to date in the US overall in general. Because even in those months that PlayStation did get that little edge, it was barely an edge. You see what I mean? And I think people were not paying attention to that. There was a lot of fanboying going on as well too, which is kind of funny. We're gonna see that right here in the next comment when we get to this. But yeah, Nintendo Switch 2 was the best-selling console in the US for March in both unit sold and dollars made. Also number one for the year to date in the US. They're winning number one and they're destroying in Japan. Sony only has an edge in Europe, but we know why. I mean, they'd have to do pretty good with the Europe territory. Pokemon Pocophia was indeed a system seller. Yeah, the game did very well. 90 plus meta. Just out of nowhere, came out of nowhere to be a hit. PS5 was number two via Matt Piscatella Circana. So right off the bat, we kind of see what's happening. I don't think people should be surprised by this because that game is a system seller. Nintendo really does a good job with that historically. Whereas you could look at other consoles, Sony can have it like that as well too. But when it comes to moving hardware with software, nobody does it better than them historically. They always have games that can move console units and the exclusive identity, which is the identity chase you see Sony trying to do now by going back to PlayStation only, by making their own exclusive AI upscaler with AMD, but also benefiting PC gaming. You see, it's the only way I think that is smart for them because the PS6 has to sell and they have to find that price point for it as well. So by going the Nintendo path, also having a cheaper model in Japan and going for the handheld aspect, they're going to be able to have their own closed ecosystem that is PlayStation only and be able to play any of their games across multiple devices, but in an exclusive identity aspect. This is the path you kind of see them going. So congratulations to Nintendo for winning number one in March. I believe they're going to win number one in April as well. Sony does have Sorrows, but that's coming at the end of April. But that price hike is not going to help. So we're going to see what happens. I mean, I just don't see how they would win in April after the price hike gets Nintendo. I think they're pretty much going to take everything now. Sony's kind of going to be fine with that. They'll have some interesting competition when GTA 6 launches, though. But that's their party. We'll see what happens when Nintendo has for the holiday. If they have that Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, oh my god, that's going to be huge. Going down, though, comments get interesting. We're going to take a look at another post, too, to see what Matt Piscatella said. Solid Python says, also number one for the year to date in the US. Oof, the arrogant PlayStation fanboys from the last few months who were gloating about PS5 selling better are in absolute shambles. And I think the reason why he says this is because people were saying you're getting outsold by a 5+ year old console and all that. I was like, you guys are being goofy with that. That's not the case. If you really look at what the Switch 2 did when it launched in June compared to now, it still held the record of all time. It's like PS5 didn't do that. And they had more first-party games. So it had nothing to do with power or anything. And I get what people were saying from the PlayStation, but PlayStation was still doing well. You know what I mean? Both are doing well because of them. Console gaming is up in March, I think, by almost 70% or whatever. You don't hear anything about Xbox. It's not even being mentioned, really. Wade Wyatt says, you losers need help. This guy says, found the cock Loeffler. Oh, man, it kind of reminds me of certain things I used to do back then. But here's the thing, though. Nintendo is supposed to be winning now. Like, they have to find a way to keep that going, and they cannot jack up the price of their console. I think they're in that position now where it's like, grow your base, subsidize a bit. You're still making the profit anyways. More than the Switch One, I bet, a line. So they can't raise the price. I don't think they should do that. If anything, raise the price of online. It's been cheap for like 8 or 9 years. They've been the most pro-consumer. I've been trying to tell people this for the longest. So yeah, the little comment here about PlayStation fanboys is actually absolutely funny because you don't really see that too much in the Nintendo world, but it has kind of been like that. So much for PS5 outselling Switch 2 narrative. Now, this right here was kind of said more in a subtle manner, where it wasn't so much about, because this is the usual Nintendo mentality, it wasn't about PlayStation 5 fanboys or anything, though that's kind of what's happening in a sense, because you got some guys on Twitter that will be like that, which is kind of funny. And then you got people coming down saying that, which is absolutely hilarious. But the Nintendo tubers told me it was a failure because it didn't have a new 3D Mario. Guys, this is the thing. When Nintendo drops more major heat, they haven't had their big conference, I'm telling you, they're going to be taking off even more. And this is what we want, though. Going back, though, to James's post, you know, James is a clown. March hardware spending grew by 69%. This is what I'm saying. It's really good. Congratulations to Nintendo and PlayStation. Resident Evil also was the #1 selling game in the US for the year. Congratulations to Capcom for that. They are absolutely on fire. Hardware spending, March hardware spending grew by 69%. I said pretty much 70% when compared to a year ago. So the Switch 2 had a lot to do with that. And PlayStation. Xbox, whatever it added in, to 500 million. Nintendo Switch 2 drove the overall gain, while PlayStation 5 spending increased by 3% compared to March 2025. So like he said, Nintendo Switch 2 drove the overall gain. Huge. So they're carrying Xbox's weight. Yeah, they are. What? It ain't anything other than that. It's like, yeah, but it's true, though. As they're falling off a cliff and not selling and doing all of that, Switch 2 is carrying this time. You see what I mean? And PlayStation 5 spending increased, so PlayStation 5 is holding its weight as well. And this was before the price hike. This is something to think about. And then they took the lead. So this had nothing to do with the price hike. This actually had a little bit of a boost because people were rushing in to try to get that out the way. And they still drove hardware spending the most and took the year overall. Not just a month, they're winning for the year. So hardware, Nintendo Switch 2 was the best-selling hardware platform across units and dollar sales for both March and 2026 year to date. That's just Matt telling you the truth. But PlayStation 5 ranking second across both measures and time periods. He didn't say nothing about Xbox. Damn. Now, back it up here a little bit and zooming in, because it says hardware, though each console's first 10 months in market, unit sales of Nintendo Switch 2 are 12% higher than Nintendo Switch. December 2017 was the 10th month in the market for Nintendo Switch. It remains the second fastest selling hardware platform in US history. 1995 current. I think it's the some other Nintendo platform that's actually pretty much winning that here. So we see Nintendo is pretty much still there. Nothing is really ahead of them. So like if you're just looking at it that way, some people saying it's kind of falling off. It's like, how though? You know, but that's just Nintendo haters though. Because in my point of view, I'm like, I don't think so. Because if you still have those type of records and you're winning, then what are we talking about here? No, they're just being goofy. They don't know what they're talking about. So that pretty much covers this. And, you know, it is nice seeing Resident Evil kind of handle its business too. If we go down over to this page, Resident Evil Requiem is the #1 best-selling game of the year so far in the US. Resident Evil 9. Congratulations to Capcom. They're doing a great job. And Pokemon Pokepio, I think, would honestly be #2 or right there with Resident Evil. If it wasn't for Nintendo not sharing digital, the company is funny. They just do not share digital for some reason. And that's where most of the sales are coming from. Marathon actually is #4 best-selling game in the US for March. #6 best-selling game of the year so far in the US and on PlayStation platforms. The interesting thing about Sony is that their game, MLB The Show, was #1 on PlayStation for March. So we see Requiem doing very well and MLB The Show being right up there. And that should tell you a lot. Yeah, Sony Publishing is doing well. It's beating Microsoft Publishing. So if we look down this list, it's like, where's Microsoft Publishing? It doesn't really exist. Nintendo's all over the charts as we see that. But the funny thing about Nintendo being all over the charts is, as we see right here with this Star being next to something, digital sales are not included. If you include digital, all their games are rising up and going higher. Crimson Desert's right here, but they didn't include digital either. Because they're not used to doing that. They're a PC company. Pearl Abyss. So this gives you the idea about publishing at the moment. It's Nintendo and then probably PlayStation number 2. And I wonder how Microsoft's going to pick that up when they release their game. So they need to get that going. So let me know what you guys think about these results right here. As usual, keep on gaming no matter what platform you're on. Congratulations to Nintendo. PlayStation is doing well also. So it's not bad that they're in that position. It's kind of expected. Definitely after the price hike, I think this is going to be the norm. Except probably in Europe where they still could sell a good amount. Later, y'all.